Essentially Financial is headed up by Les Conway, the founder, director, and lifestyle financial planner. His vision establishing the firm back in 2010 was to guide people along their lifetime journey as their financial planning partner. He strongly believes that establishing and quantifying individual objectives are the solid cornerstones of the financial planning process. It's not about product or performance or flavor of the month, but understanding where people want to be, where they are now, and reaching their destination. At the end of 2018, and as part of a longer-term succession plan, Essentially Financial teamed up with Flying Colours to offer wider support to clients whilst enhancing and maintaining his independence. Liz lives in Pinner near London with his wife Caroline. Away from the office and his work, he's a motorsport nut, loves golf badly, is a Matt whiskey lover, a James Bond and Sweeney fanatic, and a long-suffering West Ham United fan. So for all our American viewers, I can give you a few seconds just to say something about West Ham for anyone who's interested in knowing about West Ham.
Okay, for the American viewers, we're talking about football, not soccer, as you guys refer to it, the original football. And West Ham United are probably one of the most historic London clubs of all time, and originated from East London Ironworks. So there's a lot of history there. And the claret and blue colours, probably the best colours for a football team that ever existed, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
You're listening to Wealthy Advisor Mindset Podcast, a show dedicated to helping financial advisors grow their AUM while enjoying a great quality of life by creating a high-performance mindset. Guiding you on this podcast is none other than Nina Cook, a seasoned mindset coach who has worked with hundreds of business owners over the last decade to dissolve all their self-sabotaging behaviors and habits to achieve their business goals so they can have a much bigger impact and make much more money. Throughout the show, we'll deliver actionable strategies to grow your practice more easily and quickly, while revealing the incredible possibilities that emerge when you tap into your best self. Ready for a breakthrough that amplifies your impact and profits? Let's dive in.
So let's get into your journey of becoming as successful as you are today. Could you share the major highlights that got you to where you are today, and also the role that your mindset played in your journey?
So I think the first thing I'd say about success is over here in the UK, we've had an industry body, it's currently known as the PFS, the Personal Finance Society. Formerly, it was known as the Life Insurance Association, which is not massively dissimilar to the likes of $1 Million Round Table, and there are links with that, which a lot of the American audience will be familiar with, etc. Anyway, they used to produce a monthly magazine in the days that print was the thing that we all did, not online stuff. And there was a guy that would do a sort of words of wisdom and a last page article in every edition for quite a recent period. I think his name was Kevin Ronaldson. Anyway, one of the articles was entitled "How long does it take for overnight success?" And his answer was probably about 15 years. And I think that's the point, really. And that particular headline and answer to that sort of question has always kind of just resonated with me, because everybody's impatient as financial advisors, and particularly independent financial advisors, and certainly in the UK, I can't speak for the US, but certainly in the UK, we're all very opinionated. We all think we know we're right, and we all think we've got something to add, which in essence we have. But to an extent, we're impatient, like a lot of people are, and not least when you're trying to build something and trying to build a business. But you have to be resilient, and you have to be mindful of the point that sometimes things take time. And one of the things that I did, so I think this is my 35th year in this business, and I went off my own 15 years ago and formed Essentially Financial. And one of the things I decided to do was kind of create a bit of a marketing program, which I know nothing about. Marketing is not my thing whatsoever. But what I realized fairly quickly was to try to not take yourself too seriously, B, to try and make it as joined up as possible, and C, to allow it to take time. And I think that's one of the things in particular, through a particular channel, so to speak, that I've found works for me, has been particularly, I would say, successful would probably be a fair word, but certainly has reaped rewards. And more important, because I've been consistent in that, And I do find it a chore, I must admit, to write an article, albeit the fact that things like ChatGPT and etc. are so useful these days.
So helpful.
So helpful. But it is a bit of a chore, but you have to commit, so basically what this is a local magazine. And one of the things that I was keen to try and do when I went off my own was to build my profile locally in a very relatively small geographical area. Of course, that to an extent has changed with what happened with COVID and things like Zoom and virtual meetings. And I was a late adopter to this and all this kind of stuff. So geography is not an issue in the way that it was. But that was the brief I set myself as a plan. Everything I was doing with this marketing through this particular local magazine was designed to become a go-to person in that sense. And it worked. And so I've always classified it as my shop window. For me, it's worked. And all it is it's literally a monthly magazine where I have an exclusive page, and I've done this consistently since the publication was launched back in, I think it was 2012. And it's worked. It my shop window. I regularly have people ring me up and they say, "Oh, I've been meaning to call you for ages," or "I saw your article in the magazine," or "We've been walking through the town and people look at you and they think, oh, like they recognise you, and you think, well, you're staring at me for." Then you realise the connection and stuff like that. But it served its purpose. And I've had a number of people from different walks of life say to me, ask me how does it work, and they've tried it. They might have been doing completely different things to financial planning or as financial advisor, but they've tried it for 3 months and of course it doesn't work. So I think that's the point, is kind of laying out your stall, setting plan with that and sticking with it, but of course adjusting what you're doing along the way once you find things that work. But to try and tinker with something and just try it out in the hope it's going to work on a short term doesn't work. And that's the thing that's really been the key thing for me.
Yeah, that's so brilliant that you've said that. It is about deciding on a strategy and sticking to it, because we are impatient. If we don't see results in, sometimes a week, we can say, well, that strategy is not working. I need to find something else. And we just go on and spending a lot of time and money and energy on new things and not give them the time to see whether they're going to work or not.
And if they don't work, I think this is the point. It's the same with the financial planning process with clients as well. It doesn't work. It's recognizing that it doesn't work and then doing something different, trying a different channel or a different route, because it's so easy to go, oh, that's a waste of time or a waste of money, and then just completely binning the whole concept, which is not right. So sometimes it's a case of, okay, well, if I don't do it this way, how about if I do it that way? And maybe there will be a different result. And the one thing I'm not being very good at with this whole exercise is really monitoring it. I think that's my point. You can take things too seriously. And as a one-man band, I'm not really, it sounds quite crass as I'm going to say this, but I'm not really bothered in some of the underlying data. If it's working and there's a consistency, that tells me it's working. And that's probably all I need to know. Because I haven't really got the time or the energy or the patience to overanalyze. And if I wanted to build something massive, then maybe that would be different. And there's a relevance to that. I understand about pay-per-click and meta tags and all that kind of stuff. But that's not necessarily something I was looking for anyway. So there would not been any need for me to sort of delve down. But it's about understanding, establishing what works, and more importantly, when you understand that it doesn't work, and there have been various things that I've tried over the years, to be honest with yourself and pedal out before it starts to become a big, big problem.
Yeah, so true. One thing that I've come across time and time again working with clients is that they lose their vision. They lose the whole purpose of why they set up their own business and what they set out to do, because they get bogged down in the minutiae of every day, looking after clients, looking after the teams, doing admin, fighting fires and all the rest of it. And I'd love to know about your experience with setting your vision when you created your own practice. And have you managed to maintain that vision? Or have you sometimes lost it? And how do you get it back again?
Okay, so the answer to the second part of the question is yes. And I'll come back to that in a second. But fundamentally, a very, very quick potted history. 15 years or so ago, I'd always worked in other firms as a self-employed appointed representative. We call that in the UK. And for one reason or another, there was the major changes going on in the UK that leading up to called the Retail Distribution Review, or RDR. which came into effect at the end of 2012. And one of the aspects behind that was things like people, people running the presses, understanding what their market was, what their proposition was going to be, because commission, which was a very historic thing providers did, how the industry worked and how the providers remunerated for selling the product, all that went, and which was a good thing, because ultimately what was happening previous to that was where the market, for want of a better phrase, was dictating what the distributor could earn, and therefore was literally sitting in the middle controlling the market. So what happened was, because it ended up becoming what was referred to at the time as factory gate pricing, the charging structure had to become more explicit as a result. Effectively, what happened was that the advisory firm and the client were much more in tune with each other and became much more connected. And the manufacturer, if you like, the providers literally dropped out of the equation. So it spoke to a lot of people on the basis that they were thinking, oh, I'm now going to pay fees, which I wasn't before. No. You were always paying. You just didn't know what you were paying and how you were paying. It was always costing you. So the principle about it being very implicit compared to explicit was a bit of a change in people's perceptions. And more so, I would say, with the advisory community than it was with clients. It didn't really, from my experience, become an issue of any significance with clients. But advisors, we were all sort of contemplating our navel and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, the long and short of it was, on the back of that, my former colleague, who I was working with at the time, wanted to go a particular route. It wasn't a route that I wanted to go. And so the suggestion was made about us splitting and me going off and doing my own, which scared the living daylights out of me when the idea came up. But very quickly, for whatever the reason, I can't remember how or what the timeline was, but it was quick. I was very inspired by it and rejuvenated by it. And one of the core reasons was principally because I was now going to become effectively the licensee and I could do it my way. But more importantly, what I realized was what most people want from financial planning, even a financial advice perspective, is to pick up the phone and just say, tell me it's going to be okay. And I think for me, that was fundamental, because having understood what most people want and understanding, which I still believe now, we all have our own ways of delivering financial planning and financial advice in particular, but I don't believe most people want the technical jargon. My personal view, I might be right, I might be wrong, but my personal view is people aren't that fussed about passives, actives, ISAs, pensions, whatever the similar tax wrappers and products that they refer to in the US, which I don't know. They're not that fussed about the intricacies. They just want to know, is my life going to be okay? And to an extent, is it going to be better than it was before? The key thing is they certainly don't want it any worse than they had before. So at least you've got, as I refer to, a start point to work from. So that to me was the thing, understanding what people want or what they're looking for. And that is what I think financial planning, and most importantly, lifestyle financial planning, is about. Trying to understand to an extent where people have come from. And that even roots back to things like how they grew up with money, what their experiences were with money, and then all the way through to obviously where they are now, but more importantly, where they want to get to. And to an extent, the why do they want to do something? What the old Simon Sinek theory about what's your why is absolutely critical. And that is the key thing, I think, is trying to understand that. That's what I believed 15 years ago, and I still believe and adopt it now. So nothing has changed in my thinking, and I feel quite strongly about that person.
Yeah, that is the driving force. So in terms of, financial independent financial advisors running their own practice, the responsibilities of looking after their clients, taking good care of their own families and all the rest of that. For the ones who are feeling that they're not where they want to be in their business, they're not as far along as they want to be, they may not be working with the kind of clients that they want to work with, or they're not earning as much as they want, they're not spending as much time with their loved ones, they're spending too much time in their business. So they're not feeling the satisfaction of, running their own practice as they would hope to have felt. They feel stuck somehow. They're thinking, well, now what? How do I get past this stage? What is that like? And how did you get past that stage?
The answer is yes, I did get past that stage, but I think it's about being brave. That's the thing. And that's the case with any business. It's not just with financial services. Sometimes you've got to take a blind leap of faith. It's easier said than done, but sometimes you've just got to be brave. And the braveness, I think, in this case is about knowing what type of clients to take on, and more importantly, what clients not to, because you can have very low income generating clients that are very high maintenance. And if a firm wants to be selling cheap, stack them high, well, that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. There is a marketplace for that. If individuals are looking at it from a profession perspective, you have to know what your target market is, not just in terms of the individual, not just in terms of the old phrase about the avatar and all that kind of stuff, but from the income perspective, what are your parameters that you're looking for? That could relate to the type of marketplace in terms of the demographic of the individual that one's looking at. I very much decided to focus on what I refer to as pre and post retirees, which I've always referred to a retiree as anybody that might be up to 15 years before retirement. Number one, there's no such thing as retirement, but it doesn't exist in the way that it used to, and in the way we've always had the perception. And number two, that 15 years, I think, is people often think about it in the context of, well, at some point I'm going to retire, I want to retire, and maybe it's not that far down the line, etc. But people often have what I call it, their ducks in a row, but they're not necessarily all facing the right direction. So there's a case of work required there. And once, providing it's done in the right way, and what I mean by that is in terms of the right way that I feel is right from a financial planning and in particular lifestyle financial planning perspective, that's when the client is on board, is on side, because it's thereafter about managing their life, which ultimately is driven by the money to make their life work. The analogy I often give in this sense is most people will drive a car. It can be a nice car or a not so nice car, but the purpose of the car is actually only to do one thing, which is to get us from A to B every single time that we get in it, and reliably and safely. And when we take it for its annual service, what we're not generally speaking bothered is the mechanic, the engineer, the technician lifting up the bonnet and saying, oh, just to let you know, so I've done this, that, the other. Generally speaking, most people aren't interested. They just want to know it's going to work, it's going to be reliable, it's going to do what it's supposed to do, which is to get us from A to B. Now, that ultimately means the engine is the critical part. We want to be really cliched about it, that makes the vehicle work, understandably. We're not that bothered about how the engine actually works or what it looks like, what it does. Is it going to do what it's supposed to do to make the car work? And that's the same with money and financial planning terms. The money allows us to do things we want to do in life. We have to establish what it is we want to do in life. And as I said before, to an extent, the why. And the most interesting thing that I found on so many occasions is people who say, oh, I'm looking at retiring. And from a financial advisor's perspective, and in so many cases, we can take a helicopter view. Somebody can talk to you, say what they've got, and you kind of know that they're going to be okay. But we have to evidence it and prove it, A, from a moral perspective, B, from a regulatory perspective, and that's part of what we do, and C, to evidence it to them so they believe it, so it becomes real to them. The most interesting thing is once you've done that part of the exercise, and you prove to them they can afford to retire, right? You then say, right, so today's the day that we've had this discussion. Tomorrow you've actually retired. What are you going to be doing? And then they go, whoa, hadn't thought about it. And the fear on people's faces is so interesting because now they're getting off this kind of treadmill of a life that they knew. And now they don't necessarily understand what the life is going to look like the day after tomorrow kind of thing. And that's fascinating. And that's the bit that really matters. And that's the bit that we really need to focus on, which to my mind allows you then to, what's the word? I want to say detract, not over focus on the monetary stuff and the product stuff and the underlying investment stuff, to get people to really understand how their life will look better the day after tomorrow. Because now you're actually helping them understand what it looks like, because now you start to establish that why.
Yeah, so this is going way beyond investments and growing art and everything.
Absolutely.
This is about life planning.
Correct.
And it made me giggle because my husband retired last year and he's still figuring out what to do.
There you are.
And, everyone is different. Some people will drop into it straight away. Other people take longer. There's no right or wrong about that. But that stage of life can be one of the most rewarding stages of life. So we don't tend to think of it in society as that, but it can really be incredible period of personal growth and, you know, learning stuff and doing amazing things. So you talked about a leap of faith. What is a leap of faith that you've taken to grow your business?
It's 15 years ago.
But since then, so you started your business, that was huge. Any time that you felt stuck and then it's not, you know, going in the direction you wanted to go, what have you had to pull out of the hat to move you to that next level?
I think that's the point, Nina. This is the thing for me. I was very much in a rut type position before this whole idea came up. And that's what I kind of mean about being rejuvenated and being re-inspired. Because when I realized what the opportunity was and where it could lead to, I've not had a situation in 15 years.
Wow.
Now that's me.
That's amazing.
It doesn't make me, you know, somebody clever. And that's just how it's worked for me. You know, so I'd gone through this process for quite some time up to that point. There were challenges along the way of let's say, building a business. And there were certain things that I was considering. I started to tinker with and decided, no, that's not a good idea. I'm going to not continue with that idea any further, whatever the case may be. Nothing massively radical. And for me, the major driver was always about the word retirement. How do I get out one day to build something that basically makes it attractive for someone else to take? And that's in essence where I'm at now. So I'm within worst 3 years of finding my calculator and pen up. And plan is being worked on now about how I exit, how the handover happens. And that's quite deliberate. So for me, the motivation was way back because I couldn't really see the wood for the trees, how it was going to work 15 years ago. I guess that's the point. And so for me, the motivator has always been that. And it's not about specifically retirement. It's not specifically about selling the book and selling the business or anything like that. It's more about, you know, I come from a background of being a typical bloke. So the Americans won't understand that, what that means. A guy where, you know, becomes a gatherer. I'm sorry to be a bit possibly, I wouldn't say sexist, but I know you understand what I mean. But, you know, came from that kind of hunter-gatherer type background. For me, going off on my own 35 years ago was a big thing. I was working in a family business before. It's a completely different industry. So I retrained and been doing what I've been doing for 35 years, etc. So for me, the way I look at it, it's a bit like running a marathon. I've never run a marathon before. I've got no interest in running a marathon. My wife has. It just doesn't interest me in the slightest. I've done other things and do other things, but that's not one. But with a marathon, you decide you're going to do it. You then train. You crank up your training. The start and gun goes. You're running your 26, whatever it is, miles. You're 3/4 of the way around. You've had enough. You want to throw the towel in, but then you can see the finish line. And to me, that's what this is about. It's about ticking a box to say, that's where I started. This is what I decided to do. What's my start point? This is the journey I've been on for the 26 point whatever miles it is. There's the finish line. And to me, it's a very personal thing, which is really that if you like to understand the driver. So the 15 years so far, yeah, there's been challenges along the way. There's been no deviation from my motivations and the reason for the why, if you like, the reason for doing it. And I think I'm nearly there. Let's put it that way. I think I'm nearly there.
So what I'm hearing is that you set a very deliberate goal with intention, that you wanted to create a business and then exit that business on your terms.
Yes.
And you kept that end goal in mind throughout. And you didn't know how it was going to happen, or even necessarily when it was going to happen. But because you kept that end result at the forefront of your mind, it's like looking at your daily goal card every day.
Yeah.
And then the hows and the whens, you figure them out along the way. You feel inspired to take certain actions, etc., because your goal is dictating your thinking. Your goal dictates your behavior and your habits. Because the goal is so firmly connected within you. Emotionally, you have a connection to the goal, and that is your driver along the way.
Absolutely.
So that goes back to the vision that we were talking about earlier on. Really important to have a big vision and to be persistent about keeping that vision in front of you all the time. Even when there's a setback, you still keep that vision and that certainty you're going to have it. That self-belief, I'm going to have this no matter what. This is what I'm going to end up with.
And maybe that's the definition of an entrepreneur. I mean, I don't know. I've never really bothered to look it up. I'm not actually sure, if I'm really honest, whether I really care. But it is about, for sure, and I've done this along the way, and I probably have done this beforehand. It's about effectively that vision board,
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was more about, I guess, identifying the what and the why, which was, well, the what was what I want to do. The why was because it's the box ticked and personal achievement type scenario. And then the other factors like factoring not so much the how, but how was dictated by understanding what, or me believing that I understood what my marketplace was, which was the individual picking up the phone and saying to me, just tell me it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That I've done throughout and everything I continue to do based on this is what I understand what you want, Mr. Client. This is what we're going to do.
Yes. This is very neatly put together. I really like this. So how do you get over setbacks?
It depends what they are.
Okay. Well, let's talk about business setbacks. Something's not going according to plan. Maybe you're not going to hit your profit that month. Clients being difficult. Maybe you lost some clients, etc. How do you get over a business setback?
I think you have to continue to remind yourself why you're doing something. So in the marathon example, I guess it could be an injury during training. But your motivation has to be your continual reminder to yourself about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And many, many moons ago, I came across this phrase of SW, some will, so what? And I think that's the point about resilience, for whatever the reasons, there's always going to be a situation where clients are going to leave, you're going to lose clients, but there's also going to be the situation where you're going to have clients with you 30 plus years, which is the case. That's called life. And it's about adaptability. It's about the old Darwin thing, in terms of being conscious of the fact there has to be a continual change and adaptability to change. And one of the things I think as humans, we can sometimes be is a bit too kind of stuck in our ways and resistance to change. And listen, I'm not saying I'm the expert on this whatsoever. Yes, there's things I don't like change on and resist, but there's other things that I just, you just get on with. And I think the driver for that for me has been just this continual focus. I don't dispute it. It's a bit exhausting at times because you live, breathe and eat it 24/7. Not everybody's the same. Not everybody can do that. We're not all wired up the same. But that for me has been always the panacea, how to get this to work. But I'm not done yet. I'm not tuned yet. So I can't.
You've got a pretty good idea.
But I think I've got a pretty good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone who's listening, who thinks, well, I'm not the sort of person who can really focus on my goal every day, it's essential. If you're not doing it yet, if you don't think you can do it, find a way to do it because it will change your life. We all should have something really big and exciting that we're shooting for. That's a bit scary, and create habits and behaviors to support that goal and to fix it so firmly in our mind that it's just a dead certainty. My favorite question that I like to ask my guests: what's the biggest lesson that life has taught you so far?
Life or business life?
Life.
I don't know about the biggest lesson, but one thing I often focus on and relate to others is always expect the unexpected. In fact, two things. That's one of them. I guess the way to explain it more so is those that you think will, won't, and those that you don't think will. And you just got to be, again, adaptable to human beings. And the thing about what we do in financial services and financial advice and financial planning terms, people behave very peculiarly sometimes and very emotionally when it comes to money. And there's lots of understandable and reasonable reasons why. And they can be very irrational. And what a lot of our job is about is trying to get people to be sensible and make sensible decisions and not be irrational. But it's not easy sometimes. You just can't change that emotion for lots of different reasons. So I think that's the first thing. The other thing is, it's not along the Nike principle, but if not now, when? Right? And I'm as guilty of that in certain aspects of my life compared to others. I don't see the point of, well, I'll do it tomorrow. I just don't see how that can really achieve anything. It's not about jumping on everything as soon as it appears, or rush. But if you keep putting things off, things won't change to a degree. And that's easier said than done, admittedly. But my wife is a classic example of that. We'll talk about something and say, yeah, okay, I'm not doing it now. I'll do it tomorrow. It could be something really minor and irrelevant, but I just kind of think, you can do it, just do it. I just don't see the point of hanging about.
So have you always been the sort of person who says, let's just do it now rather than putting it off until tomorrow? Did you have to train yourself to think like that?
Good question. I think I've probably always been that mindset. If I want to do something, I'll do it. If something doesn't appeal to me, I make a fairly instant decision. So I know something I don't connect with straight away. I've become quite good. However, that might be just down to training myself, or just being, I don't know, of knowing what interests me and, more importantly, what doesn't. So if something doesn't, then I'll no thanks kind of thing.
I think we get better at that as we get older.
Maybe it's age. Yeah. All right, I'll take that one on the chin on that. I say.
Interesting. It's a wonderful, doing things now. I mean, for example, when you have a client, you're the sort of person who will just write up the client notes there and then, rather than saying, oh, I'll do that later. And when it's done, it's out of your head. When we procrastinate and put it off till tomorrow, we're still sitting around in our head, taking up valuable space in our thinking. So it's best just to get it done, and then you stop thinking about it. Fantastic. And how can our listeners find out more about the amazing work that you do?
So there's two ways. One is my website, www.essentiallyfinancial.co.uk. On there, I have a thoughts section, and I do a monthly post, which you just click on there and you hit the button to likewise subscribe, and that send out the monthly article direct. It's also posted on the website. It's also posted on LinkedIn as well. So it's all out there in the domain.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Les. It's been such a pleasure to speak to you today. And thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and your experiences with us. So for everyone who's been listening, thank you so much for your company. Until next time, bye-bye for now.
I hope you enjoyed the episode today on the Wealthy Advisor Mindset. Make sure to hit subscribe on your chosen platform to get notifications on upcoming episodes. If this episode made you think of someone who you think would benefit from listening to it, then go ahead, take a screenshot, and share this episode with them, or post it on your social media to share with your friends and colleagues. You can catch the show notes for this episode and any mentioned links in the description. If you are a financial advisor who is struggling to grow your AUM and profits while creating a great work-life balance, and you know it's because your mindset is stopping you, or you have a specific challenge in mind that you would love Nina's feedback on, go to chatswithnina.org and grab a time that works best for you. We'd love to see if we can help you. Once again, it's chatswithnina.org. We will see you in the next episode.